Hello and welcome back to the second hour of America's Forum on Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. Amid scandals hanging over his second term, President Obama remains adamant that the alleged IRS scandals was not a scandal. In fact, everything was above board, maybe just some poor decisions.
There were some boneheaded decisions out of a
but
local
no mass
office.
corruption.
Not even mass corruption, not even a smidgen of corruption.
Okay.
So were IRS officials really just confused about all those tax-exempt groups? Plus, the commander-in-chief also downplaying the Benghazi controversy, plus more duck and cover from the president on Obamacare. We'll have more on his exclusive interview with Fox News. Plus, Chris Christie fighting back against allegations that he was involved in the George Washington Bridge scandal. The New Jersey governor has slammed the New York Times and his former high school friend and Port Authority official David Wildstein for making those suggestions, all based on a letter that was released by Wildstein's lawyer. Christie criticizing the Times for sloppy reporting. Did Christie have any knowledge of those lane closures while they were happening or not? A lot of people still want to know. We'll expect answers from the governor soon when he takes questions from the public tonight on his Ask the Governor show. Also, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu critical of U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. They're at odds over proposed boycotts and sanctions of businesses operating in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Netanyahu said the boycott only encourages the Palestinians to reject any compromises by the Israelis. This just a day after Kerry warned that talk of more boycotts could doom current peace efforts. Also, Kerry's office is firing back with a statement of their own. Has Kerry really done everything that he can to protect Israel from possible boycotts? Also, more bad news for those Denver Bronco fans a day after basically getting humiliated at the Super Bowl. Many remain stranded on the East Coast after another round of bad winter weather bears down on the East Coast. The storm system is expected to dump up to 8 inches of snow on New York by this evening. It has already grounded flights out of New York City airports Monday morning. Snow is again likely Tuesday night, and it will involve some sleet and freezing rain, which, as we saw in Atlanta last week, makes things even more dangerous and difficult for everyone out there trying to travel. Also, the most exciting thing from last night's Super Bowl, certainly not the game with the blowout, the commercials. A lot of folks love these commercials. One of the ads that got people kind of upset a little bit is Coca-Cola's America the Beautiful ad. It lit up a firestorm of controversy on social media last night. The spot features a diverse cast of characters singing the song America the Beautiful in different languages. Some critics called it un-American. Some called the commercial a reflection of how the country is a melting pot. See how Coca-Cola is defending its ad, a salute to America. It's a packed day on the show today. We have Bob Wiedemer, who will be coming up with us just a minute. Plus, we'll have General Michael Hayden here to talk about the Olympics in Sochi. A lot of questions concerning whether or not these athletes will be able to be protected. General Michael Hayden, of course, a retired Air Star, 4-star general, was the director of the NSA and the CSA. I'm sure he can give us some insight as to how the security is going to play out in Russia. The world focusing on Russia right now, very close to a very tumultuous region of Russia plagued with terrorism. All right, let's bring in Bob Wiedemer. We want to talk about the economy right now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average at different points today, down sharply over 200 points, about 1.5% today. We're just coming off the first negative January for both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500. There's been this sell-off in emerging markets. Bob, when we see the stock market tanking like it is right now, is this a simple market correction? Is this a pullback, or is this a sign of deeper troubles? All right, clearly we're having some technical issues there with Bob. We're going to highlight some of these numbers that I'm sure a lot of folks who are interested in the financial markets, anybody with a 401k is checking into right now. The Dow Jones, just in January alone, took a 5.3% drop. The S&P, 3.6%. The S&P important because a lot of folks say that stock market better reflects the economy today as opposed to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Bob Wiedemer, who we'll have with us hopefully in just a second, he was one of the first people to take a hard look at this and predict the economic downturn all the way back in 2006. Many Newsmax viewers and many of our readers know of him from the Aftershock, a hugely successful operation that Bob has been good enough to work with us on. And so we'll talk to him. He's definitely taken a hard look at the financial and the economic indicators that are out there right now. And Bob's going to give us an example of, what this means in the long term. Also, how does this all factor in when we look at unemployment in terms of the global economy? Up until very recently, up until the last month, the stock markets have been used as a positive sign of things getting better, but unemployment continues to be the biggest issue in this country. We heard Grover early in the show, and Dick Morris as well, talking about real unemployment being closer to 10%. Than the figure that you hear and we'll hear more about on Friday. A new jobs report coming out, this being the first week of February. Every Friday we get the government numbers, the non-farm payroll numbers, and we've become accustomed, especially during the election last year, to getting these numbers every Friday. But are they giving us the full story? And we'll have all of that insight and more coming up as soon as we can get Bob Wiedemer to join us. There's also this issue, and hopefully Bob will have some insight on this as well, and what Janet Yellen will mean. She's set to take over at the Fed this week, and she was the vice chair of the Fed, studying under Ben Bernanke, so there's a lot of confidence in her, and she did manage to beat out Lawrence Summers, who was who's been involved in the Fed for a long time. He was an Obama advisor, also a Clinton advisor. Even Republicans liked Yellen over Summers, but does this downturn of the stock market have anything to do with the fact that Yellen's taken over for Bernanke at this very critical time? She's going to be behind closed doors as she takes over the reins of the Fed this week, preparing for what a lot of experts are predicting is going to be a very difficult time on Capitol Hill when she has to face members of congressional committees, Senate Finance, Banking, the banking committees in both the Senate and the House. So she'll face some very difficult questions, particularly in the House, because those committee groups are controlled by Republicans. The Ben Bernanke and this idea of quantitative easing has not been popular in conservative circles, and some folks would even indicate that some of these problems we're seeing with the markets right now are tied to the concerns that come when you're trying to back off of take the punch bowl away, so to speak, as we heard so many times before. So we have Bob with us now. Bob, great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
All right, so everybody focuses on the stock market. That's probably the most obvious thing, if not, maybe not the best indicator on where things are going. But when we see these 1.5% or 2.5% drops in the market on a day of trading, does that to you signal anything more than this is just a market correction?
Not really. I think that the key is not that the 1.5% drops or 2%, but this has obviously been a trend. January should have been a good month. I mean, there were no roadblocks in front of the stock market. No real bad news came out in January. So I think that's the real key here, is that the market is going down consistently since the second half of January on no news. So, yeah, I think it's a correction. Do I think it's a collapse? No. But this correction may go to 10%. It may not even stop there. Everybody's hoping for, I think the bulls are hoping for a correction, and then it'll pop back up. But we'll have to see if that really comes true.
And so what are you looking for first to see if it really is true? What we had the earnings reports, that was, but what looking ahead, what are you looking for specifically?
I'm going to look at how this market trades. In the past, if you'd see a big decline, sometimes you'd see a real sharp increase, or you'd see a big jump in the futures the night after you had a bad day. And I'm not seeing any of that right now, to be honest. In fact, it's just kind of melting away every day. Not every day, but many days. And, just like today, no real big recovery, nobody jumping into this market. So that bothers me probably as much as anything. It's just the pattern of how it's falling. And that doesn't look good to me at all. I want to see that pattern change in some way where I start seeing people jump in and this market really start to jump, 40, 50 points. Now, 100 or 200 points in the Dow. And also just where I see some sort of spike up. I don't see any spikes up.
What sectors of the economy, and looking at equities in particular, are most imperiled right now, aside from what we've already seen from the sell-off recently?
Well, if you look at the GDP news, there's nothing imperiled, right? GDP's up 3%.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But when you're talking about specific sectors of the economy, what to you, when nobody's really talking about right now, that we should talk about some red flags?
Yeah, well, let me just say, though, I think the key here is that the stock market and the economy have very little to do with each other, okay? In other words, the stock market's been up 30% last year. The economy certainly wasn't. So imagining that there's a tie between the two right now, it's not there. So I don't know if anything's imperiled right now, other than we've obviously seen problems in housing, slowdowns. There's slowdowns in sales and so forth. That might be seasonal. We're seeing problems in retail. Christmas sales are not very good. We just saw that sales of cars declined in both December and January. So, I mean, the typical stuff might be imperiled, but I want to emphasize there's been no correlation between the economy and the stock market last year.
And that's an important point to make because it's covered so often in the media as if it is a real bellwether or thermometer. But it's important though because as it's kind of the I guess the best litmus test that most media outlets like to use when they talk about the markets. It's important from an emotional standpoint because people see this and don't really understand the correlation between these markets and the actual economy. And a lot of times decisions are made based on emotion rather than actual facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I see going here is that I don't think there's any real reason for this to go down. I mean, people use the emerging markets excuse. I don't really think that's driving it. I think the emotions are changing. Just like I always point out, in 2000, when the internet bubble popped in March of 2000, what was really different about that month than months before or even months after? This is an emotional market. This isn't driven by financial fundamentals. So, but that doesn't mean, oh, well, be in, it'll surely go back up. It means that, we went way up on emotion last year, and you may go down on emotion this year.
Yeah, so let's talk about that new GDP report, the report saying that the economy grew at more than 3%, which is kind of, I guess, the Mendoza line, if you will, for the economy to grow. But, is there anything that gave you any confidence? You seem skeptical of that report.
I do, and I can't tell you I have a specific reason on all of it. One thing we do know is that a good chunk of that growth was due to inventory increases, which could pull back over the next few months. We saw bad sales coming out of January. But that said, there was some real growth there, and I guess we're back to, in fact, I'm writing an article on that for the FIR here, is we're back to statistics. Statistics aren't really meant to necessarily be perfect every month or necessarily even every quarter. And I'm not sure that GDP number is really reflecting a big increase in the U.S. economy. Part of it is also just because we're exporting more than we're importing. But I'm not sure it's really reflecting a big rebound in the economy. We're certainly not seeing that in manufacturing or retail. Even services not doing that well. So I guess I'm skeptical. I don't have a particular reason other than, be careful about putting too much weight on one statistic that seems a bit out of line with others.
Sure. And well, sorry to bring up another statistic, but this week we're going to get the non-farm payrolls from the government. But this, when you fold this in with everything we're hearing about food stamps, there was in the farm bill that was passed in Congress just recently, there were significant cuts to the food stamp program, and a lot of folks would say that's warranted because we've seen such a growth, and there are some indications that the economy might be getting back on track, so maybe this is the right time, just like with quantitative easing, to take a step back a little bit. That said, we also know that places like Walmart and the people that shop at Walmart rely heavily on these subsidies to fill up their cabinets. Walmart's saying that if food stamps are cut, it's going to hurt their bottom line. What's your take on this statement?
Well, I think it will. I mean, Walmart's already, struggling, and in fact, many analysts are calling for them to start closing down stores. Quite a change for Walmart because they have a fair number of losing stores, losing money. I shouldn't say a fair number, but some analysts have said like 100. So I think it is going to hurt them. More importantly, maybe, is the unemployment benefits are being cut off. And of course, that's going to directly affect that jobs number. A lot of people who lose their unemployment benefits will stop looking for jobs and then technically not be counted in the unemployment numbers. So we may see it drop, but it's really just because of what's happened the last couple of months is people are leaving the workforce in huge numbers.
That said, last week the people entering the workforce, or the people claiming unemployment benefits, grew, and so that would indicate perhaps that more people are jumping back into the market. Do you think that's a sign that maybe the faucet's being turned off a little bit on the food stamp cuts, or maybe a sign that people emotionally feel like the economy is getting better and they might have a better shot at getting a job now?
Well, possibly, although I saw a poll that CNN did that said over 70% of Americans believe we're still in a recession, so some might be that way. And also, when you cut off unemployment benefits, some of those people do then just take whatever job they can get. Some leave the workforce, but some will also just take whatever job. So there'll be a true decrease maybe in that sense in unemployment from that group. But I think it masks a much bigger problem, is that you're not creating highly paid jobs that really are going to have a good impact on the economy. So again, I'm worried about leaning on statistics too much. And January, people, if it comes out low, the bulls are going to say, well, that's because of the cold weather and so forth, and changes in unemployment benefits. But I think bottom line is you've got a bigger shift going on in the market from its mentality standpoint that is irrespective of unemployment or GDP or any of that. So I think the market is recognizing we went up 30% last year on earnings that were up 3% and GDP that barely grew much more than 2%. That's the bottom line.
And we like to people look at gold as the hedge against situations like we're in right now. Do you think gold is going to become more favorable after taking it on the chin a little bit last year?
I think it will, and I think what you said is absolutely critical, is that gold is a hedge against situations like this, which is financial uncertainty here and around the globe. I mean, we're seeing the emerging markets clearly in trouble, and that's who buys a lot of gold. India and China buy almost 40% of the gold produced every year. So I think it is a hedge against this kind of situation, not necessarily inflation, although I think it does a good job there, but it's really a hedge against financial uncertainty. So this is certainly important for gold going forward.
All right, the shine might be back on gold. Bob, we'll have you back with us soon. We also got General Hayden coming up. Sorry to cut you off, but we got to go.